All right. Where's my cheat sheet? All right, we reconvene from executive session at 6:33 PM, and we will go into open session to act as deemed appropriate. City Council's discretion regarding A, consultation with legal counsel concerning any regular meeting agenda item,
No
action.
and B, city manager's performance evaluation.
No action.
All right, we will now go into our open session. Sandra, please note, we have our city manager, yourself, we have Roy, Starr, Chief Smith, Aaron, Dave. Is there anybody else? All right, I think Eric's going to be joining us in a little while. But we have all of our council members here present as well. If you would, we have Pastor Dale from Trinity Anglican Church going to lead us in our invocation, and then we'll say the pledge to the flag and the Texas flag. If you would, sir.
Join me, you stand. Heavenly Father, we come before you on this beautiful day, thankful for so many things. Father, we thank you that you have allowed us to live in a free country and have called us to live in this beautiful area, Lago Vista. Father, we lift up to you tonight for protection, all of our city employees, all of the first responders. We pray especially, Lord, for protection for them. And now we pray that this meeting will be pleasing to you, and that you guide the hands and the feet and the leaders of this city. We offer this prayer in the name of your Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. All right. Pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Texas. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. You can see it. All right, we now go into our citizen comments. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, council is prohibited from acting or discussing, other than factual responses to specific questions, any items not on the agenda. All right, first up, I have Rodney Cox.
Good evening. My name is Rodney Cox, 2808 Douglas Cove. My subject is your street in my yard. So I live at the bottom of Douglas Cove. I've been talking to the city manager, the city engineer, city employees, the mayor about every time it rains, the rain comes down the hill, and all of your gravel and faulty street repairs washes into my driveway and into my yard. When I moved there 9 years ago, I saw that there was a drainage problem, so I lowered my yard so that the water could drain properly, goes into my driveway and goes that way. But now, because of the repeated rains and the faulty repairs in the road, that's what the city engineer has blamed it on. But now my yard is about this much higher than my driveway is because all of that gravel comes running down the street. So I guess what's really needed is a French drain, but we need those two spots repaired, first of all, so that will tell us whether or not that's the gravel that's ending up in my yard. But need those two repaired with an adequate the city engineer said they were failing. Need that done, and then if that doesn't work, maybe a French drain put there so the water has the ability to drain. And I own both 2808 and 2807 Douglas Cove. I own the half acre next to my lot. That gravel gets down on that. It's directly at the bottom of the hill, and so the gravel builds up there as well. So we could do a trench drain, run it underneath my property and onto that property, my other property, and let it drain out that way, and I'll clean out the gravel out of there if need be. But I've asked the city manager, the city engineer, and mentioned it to you just one time in passing it about the problem, and it's only getting worse. I'm getting
Is there a dry creek bed through either one of those properties at all?
No, it runs behind me. There's a dry creek bed that runs behind me. It's actually in the flood zone. So you go down, straight down Douglas Cove. At the end of Douglas Cove, you go about 20 feet onto my property, and then there's a huge drop-off cliff right there. But the water comes down the hill and goes into my driveway, and then it pools there, and it was draining into my yard. The water does, but unfortunately, all the gravel and everything that washes into my driveway is now building up in my yard. So my yard's this much higher than the driveway is now.
Created a dam.
Yeah, and I've got pictures of all that if anybody's interested, but on the last big rain. And so since it builds up there in pools in the middle of my driveway, in heavy rain, it moves over and goes in front of my garage and along my sidewalk and pools, and I'm getting gravel on that side of the yard now. So and they said it was on the list to get it repaired. The city guy that came out there and talked to me said, yep, this is a problem, we'll get it on the list, and that was over 6 months ago. So
You just don't know where
getting
to-
tired of shop vacuuming that gravel up. So
Okay,
appreciate your help.
thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Ryan. All right. Next on my list, Gaynor Perry.
Gaynor Perry, 21494 Coyote Trail. I want to talk to y'all about the Green Center. Over the past month, my neighbor and I have been trimming trees and stuff and loading a big 18-foot trailer with trimmings and limbs and such to take to the Green Center. And when we got there this morning, and I mean an 18-foot trailer, a big trailer. When we got there this morning, the guys told us that they were no longer allowed to help us unload. And they also told us that the guy in charge now said that they didn't care. He didn't care if it was an 80-year-old lady. She was going to have to unload it herself. And I argued with them. You got a perfectly good machine right there, the backhoe, to just put the bucket on the trailer and pull the debris off and let me go on down the road. Had I known that this was going to happen, I surely would have loaded the trailer in a different fashion where it would have been easy to unload it. And I'm just thinking that the message that that's sending is don't clean up your yard and don't trim your trees. And I think that it would be so simple to just maybe have a release of liability waiver or something. So when people pull in there, sign this to release us if we damage your truck or your trailer. The city's not responsible. If you sign, we'll help you unload. If you don't sign, then you can unload it yourself. But that's basically all I wanted to talk to you about and see if something could be done with that, especially when it's 100 degrees. Nobody wants to be out there unloading all that stuff by hand.
All right, thank you, sir. We'll
Thank-
definitely look into that.
Thank you.
Bob Stone. Bob Stone.
My name's Bob Stone, live 5400 Thunderbird. Would just like to ask a couple of questions about some concerns concerning the request for a special use permit for the 20815 Dawn Drive by Syntex Builders for variation of the zoning there. Just a question, at this point, will there be any action taken at this meeting?
No, sir, it hasn't gone to planning and zoning yet.
Okay, so there's nothing at this point that, just as a matter of public information, may I ask who made the request for the special use variance? Was it the owner of the property, or was it a representative of Syntax Builders? Who actually made the request for the,
All requests come from property owners.
from the property owners? Mhm. And is that a matter of record? Who, the property owner who made the request?
Yes.
It is a matter of public record?
Yes.
Okay. May I
You would
ask,
have to, you would have to to request that, to an open records request, but
No,
what?
Texas, Travis County Appraisal District put in the address, tells you the owners.
Yeah.
Yeah, an application for an SUP apparently has been made, correct?
Yes, sir.
That does need an open records request. That's why you make notice.
Has it been, I didn't know if the notice had gone out yet,
Yes.
so.
Yeah,
Has?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
It was
so it-
confirmed at the last P and Z meeting.
Okay, so it's on the website then?
But
the request,
Yes.
the guy you need to talk to is just over your left shoulder.
no, sir, I need to talk to the council.
Well, but he's got the information about the SUP and the process and what will happen next. And P and Z hadn't got it yet, or have
No,
they?
they've had, it's been there and deferred. They deferred it, the applicant wasn't present, and they deferred it so that he could be present
So when will P and Z take it up again?
next week. And the application itself is on both packets, for P and Z, the current meeting and the one that's already passed. You can see it in his own handwriting, his own signature.
Okay.
It's on the website.
And then
It
we'll
is-
get it, if P and Z acts on it, when would we get it?
The first meeting next month.
October.
Okay, so
So-
that information is on the website.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much, appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. All right, that is all I have signed up at this time for citizen comments. I have a couple of others that have signed up to speak, but they're on agenda items. So I'll hold on to those. If there's anybody in the audience who did not fill out a request or would like to speak at this time, please raise your hand and you can do so. All right, we will move on to items of community interest. Pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.0415, the city council may report on any of the following items. A, expressions of thanks, gratitude, and condolences. Excuse me. B, information regarding holiday schedules. C, recognition of individuals, i.e. proclamations. D, reminders regarding city council events, reminders regarding community events, and health and safety announcements. Other than actual city council scheduled meetings, I don't have any city council events, community events. I don't know if this is the event, but the farmer's market that was on Lowman Ford Road will now be here in this parking lot starting tomorrow. And that's all I have as far as my announcements. Yes,
On September the 21st, the Lions Club will be having a pancake breakfast at the Allegiance Fire Station. That's our fire station here in Lago Vista. The funds raised from this pancake breakfast will go to the fire department and will be funds available to them to supply and buy items that are not on the regular schedule when they move into the new firehouses. Like for everybody to come on out. It will not be a so much per ticket price. It will simply be donations to help the fire department.
Thank you. Anyone else?
What was the date on that?
September the 21st. It'll be from 8 to 11. All you can eat. And we make good pancakes.
It's before all the football games.
That's it.
All right, we will go into our public hearing. Number 3, the Lago Vista City Council is holding the first of 2 public hearings to receive citizen comments on the proposed tax rate of 0.65 per $100, valuation for the 2019-2020 budget for the city of Lago Vista, and take necessary action. And I'll open the public hearing at 6:49 PM. And we'll start with staff presentation.
Mayor, this is another one of our public hearings to consider the FY 2020 budget. It includes the tax rate of 65 cents per $100. We do have this public hearing set for today. We have the next public hearing set for next Thursday, and that's the 12th. And then we'll present to council the FY 20 budget on the following Thursday, which is September 19th, for council to consider the adoption of the budget. This document has been made available online. We've had 4 additional meetings up to this point, and we have hard copies available at City Hall and at the public library.
Council? Questions, comments at this point?
Mr. Mayor, I did, for my own purposes, I put together so I could truly understand what initiatives we have from the general and what initiatives we have from the utility. So I just made copies of this for everybody to have, so it's a little bit easier for people to keep track of where we are on the initiatives that we set up. Everyone got one? Yeah. So, not gonna go through it, but I wanted to just have it so you could look at it and refer to it.
And this includes the white pages that we discussed
This
and
includes the
everything?
white pages. I sat down with Star and went over all the initiatives that the city had set up, you know, as far as personnel and street department and stuff like that. And then did all the white pages and added that into it. So the first page just covers the general fund, and the second page covers the utility fund. So gives you a breakdown on the dollars, so,
All right.
okay?
Anybody else? Thank you.
You got it.
All right, this is an open public hearing, and we will go to the public now. I have Kevin Sullivan.
See if I can get myself organized. Sorry, Mayor. Kevin Sullivan, 3933 Outpost Trace. The first thing I wanted to ask was a question about the transportation study. I'd come up and asked about that before. I don't know that I'd heard that there was any resolution. Was there any thought amongst the council about funding that and making sure that it moved forward so that we'll have it for future purpose?
If I may, Mayor, part of the discussion and the plan is to include the transportation study in the comprehensive plan update. And so we have spoken to Campo about being a participant in the master plan update to include the transportation study. So yes, sir.
Okay, awesome, thank you. The second thing I wanted to talk about was the golf course budget. I made this same point last year, and I'll make it again this year because I think it's appropriate again. You know, the citizens of Lago Vista have made a huge investment in money spent on the golf course, both to buy it and to deficit fund it over the last 11 years. As any investor, citizens ought to get a return on that investment. Last year, we discussed the budget. It was originally set for $500,000 to be the deficit. We talked about the fact that they were going to do better than that the previous year. Why wouldn't we expect an improvement? And so we set it at $450,000, and this year they'll beat that. It looks like they're probably going to come in around $430,000. So I guess my question is that
why would we set the budget to be a loss of $435,000? That means we're expecting no improvement and no return on investment to the citizens of Lago Vista. It's my understanding from talking to City Manager Ray that Chris originally asked for only $398 that he said he could do with that. So I guess my question is, do we want a return for the investment for the citizens of Lago Vista? Do we want to challenge the golf course to perform better every year? Or do we want to let it continue to languish and lose more and more dollars? I would suggest we want the former and not the latter. And then my last point is about just debt in general. I get the impression that this council is very debt averse. I'm like that in my personal life, so I'm really no different from y'all, but I do have a point I think I'd like to make. When I joined the council in 2016, I had heard from citizens, hey, we're swimming in debt, we're gonna go bankrupt, blah, blah, blah. So I asked then City Manager Vosmer to get with Tom Lawrence, our financial consultant, and ask for how we existed compared to other small Texas cities. And he did that. He came up with a study and it showed that we were not out of the range compared to other cities. In fact, we were half per capita as that of Lakeway, excuse me. So I guess my point was is that at that time we found out, hey, we're really not that bad. I'm probably gonna go over, I apologize, Mayor. We're not that bad. And so as a result, I felt comfortable, and Mayor was there at the time, we voted on the $8 million bond package, okay? And we had some very needed, essential infrastructure projects that need to get done. And I felt comfortable doing that. And I think that the results of this year showing that we're going to generate, $2 million plus surplus shows that we easily were able to handle that debt and that we could take on more if we needed to. Now, I'm not trying to say go out and burden us with a bunch more debt. That's not my message at all. But I think my message is, let's not completely discount it. And I say that for two reasons. Number one, we can handle it. It will help us do things quicker. For example, roads, we don't have to wait till 2039, for example, to have that last road paved. Maybe we'll get it in 2029, for example. But I think the main point that I want to make is that both businesses and municipalities have made an effort for centuries, to try to match revenues with expenses, okay? And what I mean by that is that we're gonna have citizens that move here 2 years from now, that if we pay for particular road paving today out of operational funds, they'll get that scot-free for the next 28 years of the useful life of that road. The whole purpose in businesses and municipalities to match funding is to make sure that those people who benefit pay for it. Okay, if we were to bond those improvements and people pay for it over 30 years, let's say, for example, the roads are good for 30 years, we bond for 30 years, anybody who's a citizen during those 30 years actually helps pay for that. They benefit from it, they should pay for it, okay? So all I'm saying is please don't completely discount the use of indebtedness. We can handle it, I believe, and let's be careful about that, but I do believe we can handle it, and it makes sure that those people who benefit from it actually get a chance to help pay for it. As always, I thank you for your time and I thank you for your service to the community.
Kevin?
Yes, sir.
On the golf course?
Yes, sir.
We were at the 398, but that didn't include some of our employee raises and stuff, so it went up from there. And then on the actual budget, it wasn't expenditures that changed to make it higher than the 398. We just reevaluated our revenues. And so.
And I get that, totally understand. All I would say
we're
is.
not really spending anymore, but we definitely need to encourage them to increase those revenues.
Right. And we've recognized for years and years and years that we have a revenue problem, not an expense problem. And all I would encourage you is that if we don't push them, how hard will they try to make sure that we're solving that problem? So anyway, thank you all. Appreciate it.
All right. Ron Smith.
Okay, Ron Smith, 20609 Oak Ridge. I rise in opposition to the 65 cent per hundred tax rate. I would recommend that we would go with the rollback rate of 61 cents and some change. The reason for this position is it appears that this budget has a lot of wasteful spending in it. We have a lot of items that are in here. We're even going to reserve funds to start new programs and to increase existing programs, which I don't think we should be doing. I think this council should be focused on a back to basics philosophy, which is getting back to water, wastewater, roads, and public safety. I think that's where the emphasis needs to be. All these other things, these quality of life issues, can probably take a back seat. For the last several years, the 65-cent rate has exceeded the rollback rate, primarily due to the appraised values, and they are this year as well. I'd like to see that reversed. So the only way I know to cut back wasteful spending is to cut back the revenue by reducing the tax rate. I don't know that we ever got our utility rate study back, so I don't know where we stand on water. The budget that's published on the website is from July 31st, so I haven't seen any change to the budget. If you want a list of ideas of things to cut to meet the rollback rate, I have a list I'm prepared to submit to the city to cut or reduce to make the 61 cent happen. Thank you.
Sure. All right, thank you. Yeah, Ron, I'd be happy to see that.
I would too, Ron, if you could email that to all of us, we have the information.
All right, that is all that I have signed up to speak on the budget. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak on the budget, now's your chance. All right. Anything else from council? Questions, comments? All right. Well, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time at 7 p.m. And we will move to number 5. The Lago Vista, number 4. The Lago Vista City Council is holding a public hearing and consider ordinance number 19-09-05-01, an ordinance of the City Council of Lago Vista, Texas, amending the official zoning map by changing the zoning district of approximately 4.3546 acres of the W.A. Cook Survey number 100, abstract number 2605, located on the south side of Boggy Ford Road, immediately west of the intersection of Draper's Cove, from R1E, single-family residential, to R4, multifamily residential. And I will open the public hearing at 7:01 p.m. And we'll start with staff presentation.
Originally, this application came before you in a couple of different pieces. One was as a preliminary plat approval, where the gentleman had bought what remains a tract of land along Boggy Ford Road, although it splits and part of it faces Highland Lake Drive. But regardless, the intent is to apply the first zoning district. It was previously TR1, where it remained in that status from when it was annexed originally into the municipal limits. For whatever reason, he chose to get the preliminary plat approved. Initially, he was chasing a density that was a bit higher than the 18 lots that was eventually approved, but our concern was, of course, is lots that were so narrow that driveways would be forced to back out onto Boggy Ford Road. And even though the existing development pattern that's there does that, they do so with 80-foot lots, and those lots would at least accommodate the possibility of turnarounds where they could drive straight out and wouldn't be quite so hazardous. At the same time, we did warn him that, unlike existing development, if you will, even though this was in Old Lago as a previously undeveloped tract of a certain size, he was going to have to deal with compliance with the Highland Lakes Watershed Ordinance, and that he should, at the very first opportunity, try and evaluate both either the financial or the physical impact, if you will, of how much land that would have to be set aside for compliance with those requirements. And at some point in time, after getting the property rezoned to an appropriate single-family district that matched the sizes of the lots around him and the development standards of the lots around him, he realized that the prices of the lot because of the Highland Lakes watershed compliance might not be as economically feasible as he thought. So he came back with an application to change it to R4, which was not completely, it was something that was tossed around at the Planning and Zoning Commission, although the thought, for them was not necessarily the form of the housing so much as the idea of doing something with a PDD where you could share common drives and common improvements to accommodate the watershed ordinance. But nonetheless, after the month's delay, if you will, since I believe the last approval, I think, was in somewhere around January, you now have this application for R4 zoning in front of you. Although the preliminary plat shows 18 lots, it is just that, a preliminary plat. So technically, it remains a tract of land until that final plat is approved. And of course, the final plat can't be approved until all the improvements are in place. And in this case, that would include those water quality improvements.
And from my understanding, the water quality, the Highland Lakes watershed, that's what you're talking about with the water
Yes, sir.
quality? That because of the size and the stuff that he would have to put in place for all that compliance, that this would probably knock it down even further from 18 single family.
Well, or they would be very, very expensive lots. You could do underground improvements and those sort of things, but boy, it would drive the price pretty high. And it's not just this gentleman. Every time we have somebody trying to do a small multifamily project in Lago Vista, we warn them, you need to start by talking to an engineer. Make sure these things are feasible before you spend too much money. Some people don't like hearing that from us, but we give the speech regardless.
So, Mr. Mayor, so is that the reason why we don't see a site plan?
Well, the R4 zoning doesn't technically require a site plan. I mean, it requires a site plan, but what you have in front of you is simply a survey of the lot. It doesn't show any improvements. As you guys have heard me preach long and hard and without belaboring the history of where we got, I think we're all in agreement we can't afford to delay, a site plan requirement for all non-single family and two-family residential property, which happens to mirror when the Highland Lakes watershed ordinance kicks in. Even though there are a number of exemptions for certain properties in the Highland Lakes watershed, you go through the review at that level. We think all property in Lago Vista should go through that review simply because everything is very close to a single-family residence in Lago Vista. And normally space is what protects them, and like zoning and to keep compatibility, but those issues are unavoidable, and it takes more than just straight up traditional zoning, in our opinion. And, in an ideal world, and it's my fault, there's certain critical paths that I'd like to see followed. I don't think we can afford that anymore. We just need to hurry up and do this. And I think Mr. Williams intends to bring it up as an agenda item at the very next P&Z meeting and have an ordinance prepared for the following meeting.
I mean, there needs to be some sort of design review so that you can see what we're actually looking at.
We have a staff review that's required as part of the site development plan review. But once again, there is a different standard for a discretionary review as opposed to a staff review. And there's greater latitude for you guys to review all things relevant without necessarily having us to defend it in a policy or a written standard or design manual or whatever.
But I wanted to make sure, the reason I was bringing up the Highland Lakes watershed, I wanted to make sure that members of the audience understood that with the requirements to meet the watershed, this would knock them down probably anywhere from, instead of 18 single-family homes, to maybe 10.
He's talked to an
10,
engineer
15.
that's done some preliminary calculations. I could do some guessing, with a drawing board and some time, but, I'll let the applicant address that, but I have my own idea of what it might yield.
Okay, and this says something about depending on the ability to use Draper's Cove.
Yeah.
Explain that.
That is not a platted public street. However, in my opinion, and it's all rumor from my perspective, but I suspect it's accurate, the city has invested money in maintaining that road and may have improved it in some areas and may have even laid utilities in that right of way. All of which, everybody has a different word for it. I call it a tacit dedication, that when you do certain things, that even if you haven't formally gone through the dedication, that it becomes a public road. And that's very common in rural areas in the county, where people build a road and the county takes care of it for 30 years. It's a county road at that point, to put it simply. Josh and I have talked to somebody who's going to buy all that property. The current owner has in the past expressed concern about people using it to get out the back way, if you will, to use what is not currently a dedicated road. It's for sale. We suspect the new owner has intentions to improve it and make it a public street. Exactly when that is, we've told the applicant we think you can come to an agreement to use that road, but that might be the easiest way, is to come to an agreement to use it.
Who owns it?
Their lawyer contacted me. I have his name.
So the
I can
road
look
is
at it.
actually owned by somebody?
Yes, it's 300 acres, and we've talked to a person who intends to buy it. But we did not talk to the current owner.
But if it's not public and there's no agreement.
It's not dedicated. Whether it's public or not, I'll let Aaron.
Well,
Be
that's a process now.
Right.
But I'm just saying if during this process, if it doesn't get dedicated as a public street.
He might get permission to use it regardless. You can,
But it could be a roadblock that.
Could be.
potentially, if the guy doesn't want to give him agreement and it's not dedicated, then he's got no street to use.
I don't think that the prospective owner has any intentions other than to creating a public street. I think the current owner
Is
just
the owner, the folks that have the property to the
east.
east?
Yep, that's them. And it goes way back there.
It goes way
Yeah, and that's
Way
a-
back there.
Yeah,
It goes,
yeah.
I drove down it the other day. It goes way back there.
We didn't get to the end either.
No, no.
That's an old PD.
So the R4 that they're seeking, says the way our ordinances are now, it prevents vertical divisions of condominiums
Right.
outside of a commercial resort. So if he built it, each one would have to be the full
Yeah,
height.
right.
He couldn't have one stacked
Correct.
top of the other.
Nobody can own above or below anybody else without a different zoning class.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, one of the questions that I keep on hearing and, kind of tried to research into this, when we went from a TR1 to a R1, that was presented to the planning and zoning, and that was approved, but then the planning and zoning asked them if they could figure out some other way to.
Yeah, they weren't, I'll
They
put
were
it, they
concerned
didn't
about
seem
all
thrilled
the
about it.
driveways. Okay, so the owner went back, the builder went back and came up with this design and says, well, in order for me to do this, I need a R4. Now, in researching this, Ms. Aaron, I gotta ask you the question. Just because it's R1 and he wants to build a R4, we cannot deny him from building an R4 location there. We can put limitations on what it looks like, but can we just deny it without just cause? I don't get it.
If his application meets all of the requirements and he's provided you all of the information.
Of an R4.
For R4, unless there's some specific public health and safety rationale that you can point to, you can't deny it.
Right. And we can't
You can put conditions on the approval if there are certain things related that are part of your comp plan, for example.
Right.
That are public health and safety related. There's a enumerated list of things within chapter 211 of the local government code that say you can address these particular issues. And so you can place conditions related to those things, but you can't outright deny it unless his application
You have to have a
has
rational
some
basis.
deficiency.
Good
But I'd
night.
like the community to know that
That's
you
the
can't
first
just,
I've ever heard that.
huh?
I'm just saying,
Yeah, if-
that's
if
the
there's
first I've
no
ever heard that in a
basis-
zoning case.
Right, if there's no basis, you have to have a basis for denying it. You can't just,
It sounds like you're stating the law with respect to subdivisions, not zoning. So what you're reporting to us is that we have to make some kind of a finding to deny.
you have to have a basis for the denial.
So,
Otherwise, you could be subject to challenge.
so would our future land use map and comprehensive master plan be a reason for denying?
Right,
Yes.
if the request isn't consistent with or is incongruent with your future land use map, with the, density that you have for that area, those are some things that you can base your rationale for not approving that land use change, that zoning request change.
For the council's purposes, I have a list of problems, but
Roy, in your comments, there was fee simple ownership and would require a PDD, absent numerous seemingly questionable variance approvals.
Yeah, I mean, a PDD allows you to subdivide these things with zero lot lines and things like that that aren't allowed in our traditional zoning districts.
So like
You
the
know,
island.
now, in theory, you know, if you could do it without a PDD and have a plat try to approve, but basically you'd be saying, oh, setbacks don't matter, and you'd have to get a variance on every setback, and how do you justify that? So the answer is if you want to do fee simple zero lot line development, PDD is the only thing in our zoning ordinance that accommodates that. Otherwise, a condo regime, if in fact he's going to build, you know, for sale units without subdividing, a condo regime and an R4 would accommodate that as well as the PDD. Both would work. But if he wants to do fee simple lots, it's got to be a PDD.
But he's
Land
not
development
looking to do fee simple though.
No, I mean, that's what I'm pointing out is he can't, not with R4.
So the only thing, Mr. Mayor, the only thing I'm thinking we could do is then put limitations on this, or does that limitations come once you see a site plan?
Well, I mean, like I said, you know, and Aaron and I discussed this, and I agree with her, that any rational, you know, condition, okay, that bears some semblance to our ordinance, comp plan, or anything else that's just simply not fabricated on the fly, if you will, I think is defensible, even within our current structure. You know, it'll be more defensible hopefully in the near future, but.
So is that put on the R4 development of me, like saying, you know, I approve the R4, but it's based on. Subject to
one, two,
having one
three, four,
driveway
five.
in on Boggy and one driveway out on Drapers, and having some sort of privacy on the back window, and a buffer zone.
All of that, as long as, you know, once again, you know, that's the same sort of, the rational basis test, I think, you know, I don't express it exactly the way that Aaron does. You know, the way I tend to look at it is that your denial cannot be arbitrary. You know, that's the language I'm used to.
Right.
But you could say it's the saying the same thing backwards, but some people would say, no, it's not. And the same thing with the conditions. Just don't be arbitrary. Don't be capricious.
Yeah, I just didn't know if the conditions happen here or if the conditions happen.
They have to be rational. They have to be based on something real, that an interest you're trying to protect, and which in this case is the neighboring properties that are very close by.
Mayor, question. Do you,
Yes.
do you want to go through this, a substantive kind of debate about where we might be now or after the public hearing?
What do you mean?
Well,
Where we might be now? It was like our stance.
we're beginning to discuss
Yeah,
alternatives to
Right.
to what's P and C's recommended to us.
Right.
And do you want to continue that discussion now or
Or
after the public hearing?
wait till the public hearing's
That's just, because if you want to keep going now, I would suggest how we could play this out. But that's how you,
Yeah, I would just assume go ahead with it.
Okay.
At this point, because,
I think we ought to, I think the R4 ought to be denied, and I have a list of reasons. I won't go through that now. I can do that.
well, when are you gonna do it?
The reason it ought to be denied is because the potential is it's an ugly development that's unsafe, that will lower the property values,
How do you know that?
that's the problem.
I mean,
That's my issue. We don't know what's going to be built. And the way to determine what will be built that would fit into that neighborhood is simply stated a site plan that would show what the buildings look like. That's a facade, that's elevations. 2, where he's going to take access to the various roads. And then he's going to have to figure out if he actually can get to Draper's, and I hope he can, because that's a good access point, but we don't know that. How is he going to deal with his drainage issues in the Highland Lakes ordinance? He's going to end up showing how he's going to drain it. It's probably a detention pond somewhere, and he'll have to spend some money to engineer it. There are folks that live behind it that are concerned about how it looks. That can be solved with a buffer wall,
Right.
fence, and/or, I like vegetation, cedar trees. And so what I would suggest that it's possible, what I'm saying is, it's kind of like a forward pass. There's 3 things that can go wrong. And I hope that we could get one that's a touchdown as opposed to a fumble or an interception, because we just don't know what it looks like. There are a ton of potential problems that he could do with a straight R4 zoning.
Yeah, I don't know that we can ask for all that stuff just when we're trying to establish zoning.
No, that's what PDDs are about, Mayor.
This isn't a PDD.
No, that's my point. I would deny the R4.
Okay.
One way to describe this is kick it back to P and Z. Don't charge him another fee for a design case, because if we deny it, he's supposed to pay another fee. Don't do that. Just ask him to keep after it, so to speak, and do some additional design. Have the community take a look at that, literally, of what it looks like, and the staff that proves up that the drainage will work, the access is safe. It's a pretty good looking development, so to speak, and then we might be able to prove it. And that's a different zoning district than R4. So you deny R4, kick it back. Hopefully he could put together a site plan with the PDD application, and then you'd see all that stuff with the PDD zoning application.
Right. And for what it's worth, he could do then fee simple lots, which,
Right.
as a buyer, I would prefer that myself, but.
So we have the option with R4 to put conditions on the R4.
Right.
Yeah.
So my question is.
They would not be as extensive as what you could do in a PDD.
Okay.
You
So
follow?
that was my question, which would give us.
The PDD can go further. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
But do we have the right to ask the applicant to do a PDD? I'm not hearing that from you all. You know, when I asked that question, everyone said I don't have the right to request an applicant to do a PDD.
I would make sure he's correct. What you're doing is denying, okay, the R4.
Okay.
You're requesting or giving him the message that you would more favorably entertain a PDD application, okay? And all I would say is be careful that your denial is based on a rational basis and is not instead arbitrary.
Well, see, I'm thinking, that's why I asked the land use, I don't have a copy of the land use map in front of me, but I'm thinking this is zoned for low density, single-family residential. And I don't think there's any R4.
The immediate, when you look at the maps that were created by the GIS department, they have a tendency to zoom in. When you look at their, and fit that property and as much on there, when you zoom in that close, there's nothing but single family right there.
Right.
You zoom out a little bit, you see a different pattern.
Right, we'd have to look at the whole.
Right, so,
Because there is a bunch of R4 down, further down.
yeah, and then there's some other quasi-commercial properties to the east as well. But, like I said, when you zoom in the way the maps are, you won't see anything that's not single family. Now, like I said, the new owner of that property adjacent to Draper's Cove, they probably intend to do a mixed-use PDD. At least that's what they implied to us, because they asked us for design listed folks that
Yeah,
design that sort of thing.
they've been out down there for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the new
Right.
prospective owner, that's what he wants. 'Cause
Right.
He was looking for very qualified design help to help
Yeah.
him.
Roy, I have one question. It has to do with the assurance that the exit because I was there when the proposal was made to P and Z about having a one-way in, one-way out the back of that property, the one way out being out onto Draper's Cove.
Yeah, that was one of
What-
the commission members you're talking about, his
Yes.
idea of how to
Yeah.
do it.
So-
Right.
So if that is the methodology for exiting those properties, what assurance is there that there's going to be the ability to access Draper's Cove? I mean,
Yeah.
if we approve.
It's a matter of short-term versus long-term. I think long-term, there won't be a problem. It just depends on what your time frame is.
Right. I'm just concerned that we go ahead and approve the R4 and then find out that there's not going to be an access.
Yeah,
point to-
there's some documentation that we would have to assemble to assert that it's what I call a tacit dedication, although there's 100 different words for it. But we would have to make that assertion and, in order for us to grant his approval over the property owner's objections.
So that would.
And I suspect all those conditions exist, but you don't do it overnight. It takes some effort.
But that might be one of the conditions that we put on the approval if we go that route. Is that right?
I think that's rational, yes.
Look at my map here real quick. How many notices were served to affected properties?
Can
got
you
it.
count that little map? I can't see that.
I gotta find the map.
Page 22.
48 is what I see. 48, okay. Do we know how many of those? I know we've got some in our packet. Do we know?
Yeah.
Is that all of them? Is that all we got?
That's all the written comments we've received. And look, the mail situation here. We have a deadline that's on the form. We don't ever enforce that. We take them up to the last minute. We know people aren't getting their mail in a timely manner. We don't censor anything.
So was the deadline at like P and Z hearing or for our
No,
hearing?
I mean, technically, to include it in the packet, we give them a deadline on that form of a certain number of it's 2 weeks before the hearing. We take them 2 hours before the hearing.
Right, but
That's
is
what I'm
that the
telling
P
you.
and Z
You
hearing?
could take
or
them
our
tonight.
hearing?
Yeah. If we get one, we'll add it. We know people aren't getting their mail, sometimes ever. And ours seem to get lost more than other mail. And when P and Z members get notices, they're not making it up. They're not getting them always.
So I didn't count, the breakdown on, looks like they were all opposed. I didn't see anything else.
Yeah, and that's not abnormal. People occasionally will write letters in support, but it's not as common. There was a gentleman that told us he supported the R1E zoning, but he didn't write a letter.
He didn't write a letter. Yeah.
He didn't, he wasn't on the record. He just didn't oppose it. That was his idea of supporting it.
Mayor, could we follow up on that a bit? Could you bring up page 22?
Yeah, that's what I was.
You've got, I think the mayor's point is that all the replies are in opposition.
But there's not that many replies.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's the 20% rule didn't kick in.
Right, we'd have to have at least 10, 9.6,
We got 3
to 5.
to 5. Yeah.
Well, but it's 20%
20% of 48 is 9.6.
That's not the way it's calculated. It's 20% of the land within 200 feet as opposed triggers a supermajority vote.
Which is.
And my assumption is, and so there's two things, Mayor. Roy, can you tell us in the written responses who opposed?
Yes, the numbers correspond to the numbers on their letter. When you look right up by their name,
Okay.
there's a number there that corresponds to the numbers on the map.
And the 20% rule didn't get triggered.
No, nowhere near.
Okay.
And I don't think they've even come close to it since I've been here in terms of that responses. Typically, this is a huge response compared to most. Now, we have more people show up in person, but the written responses, much thinner.
The thing that concerns me is that, the mayor will open up the public hearing. Citizens are going to get up and say, well, that are here, that oppose it are going to say, well, I really don't like the idea of having that in my backyard. I understand the feeling, but that doesn't give me a legal reason for doing one thing or the other. You tell me I can't request PDTs, or all I could do is put limits on R4. Planning and zoning is, when they get the package, they're just looking at taking this from a R1 to R4. They understand the zoning issue,
And don't,
but they
and
don't have a
once,
site plan either, so.
and once again, and I'm being a little picky here, but, the PDD is technically a separate question. What's in front of you is an R4. The only thing we're saying is deny the R4 for a rational basis. If you, in that message, invite him to do a PDD, all well and good, but they're not intertwined. Be careful.
So in the R4 application that you have, is there something that is opposite what an R4 applicant should do? Is there some reason that you could tell me?
If you
for
want me
deny
to
it?
list potentials, once again, you say, look, in the near vicinity of this property, it's different from the existing development pattern.
And that's why,
Yeah.
that's my argument, is that future land use map. To me, there's nothing in close enough proximity
Right.
that would justify having,
Well, and a corollary, once again, being careful not to intertwine them, but knowing that because of various very valid environmental regulations involving, the contaminants that might end up in the lake, the fact that single family is not necessarily economically feasible, you're saying, that's fine, okay, but we need to make sure that your non-single family residence is extremely compatible because of the close proximity and the small depth of these lots. Once again, you're saying, look, it's not that we're denying you the use of your property. We're just saying we need more than this.
Yeah, buzzword is incompatible land use.
Yep. And you could, and once again, and it's not just the pattern of the map. These are not very deep lots. Either these or the ones behind them. It's not like people have room where they can get away from each other. So it takes extraordinary measures, perhaps.
I have another question for you, Roy. As I recall, one of the things that was proposed to satisfy the Highland Lakes watershed ordinance was to have a retention pond.
It requires, not just detention, you have to filter that water as it leaves.
Okay, but at this point.
And that's a separate problem.
Right, so if one of the things that was going to be done here to mitigate any problem with runoff is to put a retention pond in there, where is it going to go? How do we know that it's going to be
Well,
effective?
I confirm that the property drains to the southeast, if my bearings are correct, if you will. And that's the low point of the property down towards Draper Cove,
Right.
to the south, if you will. The detention pond's gonna have to be somewhere in that vicinity. But once again, the other part of that that's very important, can take up a lot of land, is the fact that after that water leaves the detention pond, you have to filter it. The most cost-effective way to do that is what I call bioswales. People have different words for them, but, it's basically running the water through a vegetative filter where the silt and sediment and toxins stay and the clean water leaves.
Right. But my point is, until we see a plan, how can we know that that is exactly what's
Well,
going to
and that
occur?
is something the staff has to do and regulate. Like on the hollows, for example, is a little strange because based on some ancient agreement, LCRA is participating in that review with us. But normally, we take care of that until it's built. And then once it's built, LCRA takes over enforcement to make sure that they're maintaining those improvements.
So, and in this case, if we so chose, we could grant the R4 with whatever conditions we have,
Yeah.
plus he's got the watershed restrictions and all of that. Those would be known in that R4.
And there's
Now-
a specific design manual for all that.
Yeah, okay.
That part's fairly well regulated by
Okay,
the
so
staff.
we wouldn't necessarily have to see it to grant this zoning, but when he did get ready to submit plans and pull permits and stuff like that, then it'd be like, okay, now you're not meeting these watershed requirements, you're not meeting the conditions, so you've got the zoning, but you're still not meeting the conditions.
And part of what I didn't mention is, and that's relevant occasionally, particularly on tight pieces of property, is where does the requirement for those improvements, how does that impact the rest of the design? Are you shoving buildings too close to other properties, that sort of thing? That's where it becomes relevant, is how does that impact the rest of your design? And you may remember, we looked at a different PDD where it was not real well thought on another small piece of property. And it wasn't so much that, the water quality, it was, look what it did. You shoved everything onto a public street, hugging the street because there was no room otherwise. Things like that. That's what you worry about.
Right. Well, I think we probably all feel more comfortable with a PDD because it would lay everything out and we would see everything where it's going to go, and the density and all the other things would be there for everyone to see.
Well, like I said, I will be the first to admit, we're a day late and a dollar short, and I wish we had design review yesterday. Even for standard straight-up zoning projects.
And
Mr. Mayor?
I think the sad thing is that if we left it at R1 single family, the watershed requirements may burden the property owner more than
Well, it will,
family.
and that's the point. I said it then, I'll say it now. We're not convinced that the lots won't be way higher than market value if you try and do single family here, or even duplexes. Because of that, and that's what we warn other people. And like I said, we can give you a couple of examples where people get mad, and they blame like we're doing something to them that's unfair. How dare you want clean water in your lake? That kind of thing.
Can I get, Mr. Mayor, clear reasonings why we cannot deny a zoning request? We've already changed it once, going backwards. Could it be changed again going forward? We couldn't deny it?
Councilmember, I'm not sure.
Well, we went from TR1, we went to R1E.
Yeah.
Could we have denied that?
If you had a rational basis for it, sure,
Right.
you could have denied it.
He's entitled to some zoning, but you could have said this isn't the right zoning.
Exactly. You can't deny him any 100% no use of his property. That's a takings. But if the zoning request that he's submitting to you doesn't fit within your master plan or within the criteria that you have in your code for looking beyond the master plan, or that it doesn't conform with, if issues are raised regarding how it affects your traffic, public safety, the other list of items in chapter 211, appropriate light and air, prevent overcrowding, things like that. If those are all very clear, easier items to look to point to say it doesn't match your comp plan in these ways, those are easy. But it doesn't have to be those specific things that are the basis for denial. You can deny it if you have a rational basis for doing it. Yeah, there has to be some nexus between the reason you're doing it and what he's requesting. Now, if you just say, I don't like it, that's probably a fodder for a challenge. So you must take some type of action on it, whether you choose to approve or deny it, or approve it with certain conditions based on what you have in your regulations or what's in the statute.
All things being equal, that he can go and goes, I want to change this to commercial.
He can come to you as often as he wants to say, okay, next month, I'm gonna, I wanna go another direction and come to you with another zoning change. He can ask to change it, every 6 months to say, you know what, someone came to me and wants to do this other type of development and come and change it. He can keep asking you, you just can't dictate to him what you would approve. You have to review what he's given you and compare it to what's in your comp plan. Is it appropriate for the area? Is it gonna affect your traffic and safety and, is it feasible? Now, if for some crazy, in some crazy scenario, he went through every single zoning, classification that you have and you denied every single him on every single one, then you might be in a little trouble because you've denied him use of his property. But we're not there yet.
I think you're gonna have a difficult putting in retention.
Well, we've given him R1E, so we have not tonight.
That's correct.
If we're good up here for now, I'm gonna open it up to the public, and do we have the applicant here?
Yes.
All right, so let's have the applicant speak first.
Sorry, it's been hard sitting there. Russ Attree, 918 Savannah Lane. I'm sorry, we're off in such a tangent that's so different. I don't even know how we got here, and it was the last thing that I envisioned was going to happen to this meeting. Basically, the water retention, quality management with the engineers, it's about a $50,000 bill. And whether I do single family or whether I do multifamily, basically the same bill. This isn't the reason I'm here. I'm here because a few months ago, after I had it and I was out there doing some conceptual work and showing it to some clients, so I could have sold the whole property as R1. I'm watching all the cars come by. And people almost run the stop sign. They don't really look. I mean, they're moving down the road. I mean, it varies from midday to 5 o'clock. It gets even worse. And I visualized 18 driveways, and I'm going to be a Lago Vista resident, and I don't think 18 driveways are safe in my mind. I know there's driveways all the way down Boggy Ford and Highlands Lake. Can't change that, and I'm sure none of those people want to move out and turn their houses into parks. But I was asked originally, when we were doing our first rezoning, and I only had a single-family mindset, to do a single road. We're 130 foot deep. And to do a dedicated road on the property for single family didn't work. But when I was hiring the engineers to do the detention, which is gonna cost us the same no matter which way we go, okay? So it's not to change the money situation. They said, why aren't you doing multifamily? You can change the footprints of the unit, we can build 2-story, you can go with a smaller footprint, and we can get you a dedicated road in property that's owned by the property, and it always was planned then when I came to multifamily to be a condo. So condo, I don't need all the other fancy documents. And your rule book, by the way, if you haven't done it yet, when you read all the restrictions we got to multifamily, when you read the setbacks, when you read about the site coverage and all of that, and then you read about the water quality management, and you don't think I have enough controls, you should come across and follow the process, because, man, there's a lot of controls. And I didn't ask for one variance. I said I'll live with the rules as they are today. Plain and simple. Draper came out at D and whatever we called the last meeting as my wish list. If I could bring one road in at the end of my property, which is across from the park, where there isn't speeding traffic, and another road out on Draper, where eventually one day they're going to have a traffic light or a traffic circle, if that ever gets developed, it would be an ideal world. 2 entrances versus 18. That's what got me to this meeting. Getting rid of the 18 driveways. Now, if you turn me down in multifamily, there's a builder going to buy the property. We have the engineers that will do the water quality management, and they'll have 18 houses there. That's not a problem. So financially, you don't have to worry, I'm going to make the money on the property. But it's not what I want. I can't imagine pulling out there at all different hours. I just don't think it's right. But, you know, the alternative is multifamily. Somehow we've made multifamily sound dirty, and I don't know why. Our units, if we do multifamily, going to be over 300 grand. It's a lot of money. Probably more than most houses that touch that property. And then from a transition point of view, you go from the storage buildings to the office buildings and retail, across the street from Draper, and then to me, that's a transition. And we got a builder across the street with a model home. That is a reasonable transition to multifamily. Nobody can deny it. And then the single family starts down the road. So, I don't know. You know, I thought people would be excited about, hey, we're going to get rid of those driveways. Hey, you're going to build a nice project. That's what I was thinking, and I just wasn't prepared for what I'm hearing. I'm sorry. I just never dreamt it. Sometimes, I guess, as the older I get, I live in my own world. And I see things and other people don't see them. But, you know, I had a vision, and when the engineer said I could fix it, then I said, let's go, and I spent some more money, you know? Or I could have not done that and turned it to a builder, and I'd be worrying about another project I'm going to see you on in a few months, because that's what I do. So anyway, I'm sorry, I don't know, I got off on a tangent too, trying to respond, because everybody was talking differently than I've even envisioned, and so fire at me whatever kind of question you got.
How many units do you intend to build, Mr. Attree?
The engineer has to tell that, and that's a back end you back into it. You design the retention, you design the amount of sheet flow, water, rain, and all that kind of stuff. And then mathematically, he'll tell us the footprint of the units. And we kind of back into it. I wish I could tell you it was real simple, but it isn't. And for me to know that, it's 50 grand. So 50 grand on single family, 50 grand on multifamily. So I got to be committed. That's why I came to you first, or else I would have already had a drawing if it was that simple. you know? And then after you spend the money, it's certainly not gonna change it, you know? I mean, I'm committed to what the engineers produce, within reason. But there will be a private road in the subdivision, and it will be controlled access, and it would be a nice project.
I understand that, but my question was, do you have any idea how many units you're talking about? None?
No.
Okay.
No. Not with any amount of certainty. All I can tell you is whatever they tell us, without looking for more variances and stuff, we're not gonna do it. We just wanna continue to build the project, whatever that happens to be.
It wouldn't be any more than 18 though, right?
18 units?
I mean,
Well, there's 18 single-family right now, and we're probably, with the detention pond, we're probably gonna change that to 17. But on the multifamily, I don't know, depending if it's duplexes or whatnot, again, I don't know. There might be more units. Again, it's just a guess. Probably 50% more than single family, but again, I didn't go to school for engineering. I leave that to the engineers. All I do is look at pictures and say I like it or I don't. I'm sorry.
Gotcha.
So I'm guessing you don't have an idea of height either.
Well, yeah, I do. I've got some other multifamily light land in Lago Vista, and some of my land that I sold to friends, they're going to 3 stories because that's the max. I personally don't like anything over 2. So that's just me. I'm not into building 3-story townhouses. Don't like the look of them. So if I build it, they'll only be 2-story.
The road that you're talking about building,
Yes, sir.
is this going to be a road that runs behind the condos, or will it be a road across the front? Have you given that any thought?
Yeah, I've wrestled with that. Obviously, we want to pour a curb or a sidewalk down the property so there's nobody jumping out there trying to take shortcuts. And then ideally, I'd like the road probably to be, again, I look at the pictures, probably in the front, some kind of swale, and to be one direction, so it's easy, and then you would pull into your units. And then you can back out and continue down when you're leaving.
I was just thinking, looking at it, I've lived in an area where there were very narrow lots. And the design was to move the condos to the front of the lot, put the road down the back. The other thing that I see that might provide, particularly to those people behind you, is a little more separation between what you're building and those houses. And I'm just giving you information. I have no idea how conceivable that is, or whether that would even work with what you have.
My first thought on the unit was, I envisioned, if I was living in it, this is how I do everything, to be able to walk out on my patio and not be looking at Boggy Ford. To be looking at a green wall, a nice landscape greenery, so that you have a backyard that you can go out with your dog or your children. So that's preference number 1. Preference number 2 would be to turn the unit sideways. And therefore, you're looking at the back of another unit, but it's not Boggy Ford. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So.
That wouldn't be as attractive if the units were facing Boggy though.
Pardon me?
If you turned it sideways, that wouldn't be as attractive from.
No, I know, but that would be a second choice, I wouldn't want to walk out of my patio and be looking or sitting out there barbecuing or watching the football game and listen to the cars roar by.
Okay.
I remember one of the other concerns at P and Z was if you had the driveways in the front, which is what you'd have if you did the road.
On the
in
single
front.
family?
What?
Yeah, they'd all be T driveways on single family. I wasn't gonna let anybody back out onto that highway.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But the idea is that the front of the building would be facing Boggy.
Well, on single family, you have no choice.
Well, how, are you going to do the same thing if you were to go to multifamily?
No, multifamily is gonna be a condo, so you've got more flexibility. But you still work within the parameters of site coverage,
Yes, sir,
water
but-
retention?
But my question has to do with the driveways.
Right.
So if you put the street in the front,
Yep.
the driveways are going to be in the front then?
The driveways obviously have to tie into
Okay, so-
that road, yes.
So one of the concerns that I remember hearing at P and Z was if you have the driveways in the front, then you're going to allow people to park boats, campers?
No, that's why it's a condo. We write the rules. It won't look like some of the streets that we have in Lago today where, cars jacked up, boats. It's not going to be like that.
So you're gonna have a restriction there?
Damn, sorry, yeah. Yes, will there be restrictions? And we have to protect the value of the property. I mean, this isn't going to be low-cost housing.
I was just repeating one of the concerns that I remember hearing.
Right, no, we'll control that, and I like that.
Basically have a homeowners association or a condo association or something like that?
Yes, sir.
attached with it?
Yes, sir. And all the specifications would be laid down, so anybody buying in there or renting in there will know what the rules are, without a question.
Yet, my concern fundamentally is, I like what you're saying, but you don't have to do that.
No, I don't.
And that's what hopefully a PD could help with. And a PDD you might be able to get some flexibility in either the rear or the front setback. And our development services director's nodding his head. So you could have some more, for instance, just for me, and the guy behind us in the same place, the building forward idea on streets, we kind of like, for instance. I don't know what the rest of, but you could get some design flexibility with the PDD and tie down. And Mayor, you can do that with conditions. We could write the conditions in as opposed to seeing the map. And frankly, I'm okay with either one of them. But that I think is what we're trying to get.
But
we're trying to tie down in this ordinance what you're suggesting you would do. And, yeah.
My comeback is I have to overcome an awful lot of obstacles in getting a workable design done that already are in place. Like I said, the site coverage, water retention, all of those things that are in place. The road that's going to go, private road that's going to move the cars within the subdivision, the condo project. And when I tell you what I'm going to do, I'm going to do it because, I'm going to be back here again on some other property. We have 100 acres to rezone. We're going to be here a few times. So if I lied to you, what kind of person would I be? That's all I'm telling you. This isn't just about business. This is about, I didn't like what we were doing. And I don't want to put my name on something I wasn't happy with, and God forbid there was an accident. And I just didn't know how bad that intersection was. And I thought this was the solution, and we spent money with the engineers to solve the problem, and then come to you, but then to say, well, you got to draw the plans and this and that, I can't draw them on a whim and then have somebody change it. And in the end of the day, if you ask other developers to do it, they wouldn't be here. They have to have some freedom. That's why we have a set of rules. I'm trying to live within the rules. Never asked Roy or anybody for one concession.
Gotcha. Thank you. Anything else? All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience that would like to address the council at this time? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address again, if you will.
Okay, Bob Stone, 5400 Thunderbird. As a matter of my making myself known, the gentleman here who spoke at length did not identify himself, so that I'm sure, having been here before, you all know who he is. I don't, perhaps a lot of the other folks here don't. However, the thing that I did notice, you had numerous questions from him, none of which did you ever get an answer for. I think, I presume, I understand so-and-so. And on top of that, you were sort of threatened that you don't have any choice but to approve this. You have to approve it. You don't. If you had to, they wouldn't even have to apply. So I just feel like you're being forced to make a decision, perhaps even this evening, that you in your own mind are not prepared to make. And I think the rest of the citizens of this town that you represent have a right to know how things are being presented and approved or disapproved. Thank you very much.
So, sir, just so you know, we have state laws that we have to comply with, so that's why when we ask our attorney to allow it to clear these things up for us. So when you say we're threatened, I would not say we were threatened at all. It was just that we were not aware that we have to go by these certain state law guidelines. And now that we know those guidelines, now we can sit back and think, okay, before we can deny this, because in the state of Texas, you have property owner rights, and before we can deny something, we have to have a reasonable reason for that.
I understand, and I appreciate the fact that you deferred to your counsel about that, and I understand that. And she did go ahead with numerous things that would make a reasonable objection.
Right.
So, at any rate, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
Appreciate your input.
And that was Roy Jambor that was speaking. He's our development services guy to answer that first question. Roy Jambor is our development services.
And thanks for pointing it out. We'll try to make sure we're more clear of when staff is speaking. We're so used to seeing them, we just assume everybody knows who staff is.
I think you identified everybody before we started.
Yeah, but.
Not specifically.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, sorry. I'm Sally Ruggiero, and I live at 20117 Highland Lakes Drive. So I'm right next door to the property. You know, we talk a lot about the conditions that are created for the people behind the property on the south side. So I guess I would say I'm west of it, just before National, right at Bowden Point with the triangle. And, you know, a question I've had for some time is, if it was multi-use, how many units would that create? And what I understand from Mr. Attree is that it would be about maybe 50% more than 17. So we're looking at maybe 27 lots. 27 dwellings. And if you have, you know, a couple with kids entering high school, you might have over 100 cars coming and going from that property. And I think one concern I have too is I know that Mr. Attree doesn't probably feel like he has time on his side, but there are a lot of unanswered questions about accessibility on Draper's Cove and things like that. So being, you know, and again, the residential doesn't start down the road, it starts next door. And a road next to my homestead, I believe, is untenable for several reasons. It would create roads on all four sides of my property. Okay, I have Highland Lake, I have Constitution, I have Crockett, and this would be, if it was right next to bordering my property, that would be four sides, not to mention National. And you know, there's a lot of activity. I've seen the activity too, when the city's been laying sewage and the city's laying macadam and things like that. I've seen, you know, the comings and goings. I've never witnessed anybody blowing through the stop sign. I think the stop sign, which is about 4 or 5 lots into Mr. Attery's property, would maybe be and again, I'm not trying to solve problems, I don't really know, but would be a better place for ingress and egress to the property, simply because there's a stop sign there. People coming on Highland trying to enter into Boggy are already there stopped. So if people are coming and going from that property, and to get to it, they would have to come from Boggy, turn onto Highland, and turn in at the edge of the property, or they'd have to come up to National and swing back around. So everybody's looping around there, you know, to get into the corner of the property. For me, a more logical place for ingress or egress would be at that stop sign or a little further down past what, I apologize, I'd say the old Keith Witter house, right at a road or something like that. So, I mean, my main concern is, of course, that safety, and also just safe ingress and egress into our parking, because we'd be asking permissions from people to get out of our parking lot, to enter the roadway and wherever people are coming. It's about the density, but it's also about where the road is put. That kind of scares me. And, yeah, there's the visibility issue, you know, I think of. So that's about it.
Thank you.
And subdivision, as I understand, it would be a PDD. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to be divided, and I wish them the best with the project, but I think there are a lot of things to consider to make us all proud of the property, as Mr. Attery says he would like to be. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? All right, well, we are going to leave the public hearing open at this time. And we will pick this up at our next meeting. It will be continued. Is there anything from council at this point? No? All right,
there's certain things that I would like to see certain limits be put on but that's wait for the next meeting for that to happen.
Yeah, we would, any amendments that you would, or considerations or anything like that, that you would want to put on.
Would take place at the next meeting.
Take place at the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mayor, could I tag on to that point? It seems to me that we're at 3 deals. Prove it straight up. For me, that's a lot of unknowns, and all of which, many of the unknowns are bad. 2 is conditions.
Conditions, yeah.
Which you write in the R4, those conditions. For instance, you get 2 access points, one on Highlands and one on Draper.
Right.
Right. Or
And your buffer.
deny in a PDD. And this is just for the next
No,
meeting.
we can't do that.
Well, you can. You can deny the R4.
Right, but you can't request them to make
You can't
a PDD.
you can't request them to do a PDD.
Sure I can, sir. Would you do a PDD? He gets to decide.
You could-
That's his call. But I understand what you're saying, but that's what I'm kind of getting at, Mayor. Pardon me, but it looks to me like we're kind of headed to condition zoning, and I'm just trying to see if that's about.
Correct. 'Cause,
That's 2 of us.
Because I'm told we can't, we can sit down with them and say, hey, are
Yeah,
you
no,
willing
no,
to do
no,
a
that's the
PDD?
point.
You know.
But to get it looks like condition zoning, it's where we're kind of headed.
Because I would not like
And I
the
got-
gentleman to think that I
Yeah.
don't like his
All right,
property.
that-
I've had to sit through this, through planning and zoning twice now.
Well, my experiences with any large developed or multifamily developments is that we always have conditions on them.
Yeah.
And most times in addition to what's already in the R4 zoning or in the PDD zoning or.
And so you're for the conditions? Condition zoning?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. you know? But I'd like us to work out what our conditions are,
Well-
you know, and then come back and say, one-way driveway in, one-way driveway
Right.
out, the buffer, the privacy
Yes.
windows, or in the back for the residents
So
behind.
we'll create the PDD for him.
Well, no, it's language.
It's just language, yes.
Instead of a site plan. Yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
All right, we ready to move on? That's just why, well, y'all can take action if you want, but I'm recommending that we leave the public hearing open and we continue on and not take any kind of action tonight. So, everybody good with that?
Yeah.
All right, so we will move to number 5.
Mayor, if you move to 5, we're good to that. I was just going to tell you that 5 and 7 are sister items.
Right.
If you chose to open them both, you'd have the same explanation from staff. Or you can do it as you please and just open 5, close 5, and go back to 7. Just wanted you to know those are related.
I mean, gotta look at my cheat sheet. How do I open 2 at the same time?
No, you can't.
Just know that the explanations are the same. Doesn't matter how you choose to handle it, Mayor, just want you to know that those are 2 tied in
Okay.
items.
So if I wanted to do that, I just read both of them. I'll open the first one, then read the second one and open it as well.
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay.
Let's do that.
All right. Heaven forbid we speed things up.
So bad you
All right,
ran the
number
chief
5.
off.
Lago Vista City Council is holding a public hearing to consider ordinance amending Appendix A fee schedule, Article 5.000 subdivision fees, Article 6.000 utility-related fees, to amend Section 6.100 impact and tap fees, and Section 6.200 utility rates and fees of the Code of Ordinances, providing an effective date, repealer, severability, proper notice, and open meetings clause. And I will open this public hearing at 8:10 PM. And I will go to number 7. Discussion, consideration, and possible action on an ordinance amending Chapter 13 Utilities, Article 13.700 Water and Wastewater Line Extensions of the Code of Ordinances, providing an effective date, repealer, severability, proper notice, and open meetings clause. And that does not require a public hearing, so I do not have to open that one. So 5 is open, and 5 and 7 have been read.
Okay.
Staff presentation. State your name and address for the audience, please.
Eric Belay, I'm city engineer.
Thank you.
Address currently Marble Falls, soon to be Lago Vista. I won't say anything because it's recorded. Mayor and council, good evening. Thank you, Mayor, for combining these two. It would have been very challenging to open up one and not the other one. So basically, one of the items is amending our ordinance of Chapter 13, which is utility extensions, and that has effect on our fee schedule. So that's why the two of them are opened up at the same time. What's been happening lately, we are seeing a lot of developers and builders, they want to choose their own contractor to install utilities. In our previous utility extension ordinance, that did not quite lay out a foundation on how to set that up. So what this one does basically sets that up on how it's supposed to happen. It just basically the original or the previous ordinance basically said you can hire your own contractor, but that was it. I mean, it didn't really lay out how that happens. There's time that staff spends on first reviewing the application, and secondly, when there are these utility extensions, there's on-the-field inspections and approvals, so there's quite a bit of time that is spent, just like we do with developments like the SARE and whatnot, so we have to have inspectors out there to do inspections and approval, and go through the planning process and, the approval process. So on the fee schedule, so that was the explanation on what this ordinance does, which sets up the the paperwork or how this is supposed to go through the planning process, through the approval and through the inspections and at the very end, the acceptance of the utilities. One of the things we are so clear now, clarifying is in the past, there's been a lack of acceptance of infrastructure from private developers. So we are trying to wrap that up and streamline that process to where when something is completed, the city properly accepts infrastructure, and we try to avoid any lawsuits or takings or anything like that by clarifying that language. I do want to mention a slight error on the Chapter 13 of the Code of Ordinances, on the new one, on 13702C. The wording says 500 feet on the very first sentence, and in parentheses is 400 feet. So that should actually be 400 feet. There's a mistake that Roy made. Right?
Throw him under the bus.
I know, right? I'll make sure it's recorded too. The other one major item that, going back to the fee schedule, one of the major items that we have received a lot of complaint from developers and builders is in the previous ordinances and in past, the city, when the city went and installed taps at the city's cost, the city installed a tap for this property, and while they were there, they installed a tap for the other property, whether they paid for it or not, because it didn't make sense for us to go and cut the street twice and do the whole work twice while we were there. The city chose to, at city's cost, to install the taps to both properties, whether the adjoining property asked for it or not. So in the previous ordinances, what the city tried to do was to try to recoup that cost, assuming if a property owner, if a builder came in and requested a tap and the tap was already in place, the city fully charged for the tap, trying to recoup their cost. However, we've had a lot of complaints on that approach. And looking at the current fees are set up to where if we are currently doing the tap, we're still doing the same process. We're still installing two of them side by side on the property on the opposite side of the property corner. But the fees are set up such that, and we are doing it in such a way that we can recoup our whole cost currently. So what is being proposed on this one, and you'll see here on the very first page of the fee schedule, is you'll see it. What's being removed is in red, what's in green is basically added. We are removing that portion to where we would be requiring a full fee payment for not having to install a tap, but instead we are clarifying that with what you see on the green language is there's simply a $750 fee, which is for inspections and things like that, instead of paying a full tap fee for us, not necessarily having to install a new one. Now, what this means is that we won't be able to recoup any past costs. However, with the new fee scheduler we have set up, moving forward, we can cover those costs, but not necessarily recoup any past costs. I don't know, I'm not sure if I explained that very well. So feel free to stop me. So on the same section, 6.1, item F, we're proposing, or it's being proposed to add a $140 fee for this application. So if somebody wants to come in and use their own contractor, so we have to go through a full application process. And we basically have to tell the contractor or the builder where to put the utility line, where the taps go. So there's a little bit of time that's spent on that. And I found out recently they cost us about $40 on My Permit Now per application. So if our estimate was $100, we added $40 to that, which would cover up the My Permit Now cost. And if you do, when you do make a motion, if it is for approval, we request that you make that with the language that, and modify section 13.702C to read 400 feet instead of the 500 feet that is written. I'm here to answer any questions that council may have. Yes, sir.
I'm trying to find it and I can't, but there's a provision in here somewhere, and I guess it's in 6,
Okay.
that says something about the staff can determine if the impact fee is paid or not. How would you waive an impact fee on a brand new development?
We are not waiving impact fees. What's happening a lot with some builders is they're saying, hey, I just want to come and install taps. However, I don't want a utility service. I don't want a meter. I'm not impacting the system. I'm just installing a tap. So therefore, I shouldn't necessarily have to pay an impact fee. An impact fee is paid when you are impacting the utility system by putting a meter in and withdrawing water from it, or adding sewer. So if some of these builders are not asking for that, we are not. So what we're doing is there's that fine line, which is if you're impacting the system, you have to pay an impact fee. If you're not
Okay, now I'm going to have to find the language because I would hope we could clarify that.
Okay.
Because it looks to me like you could decide they don't have to pay an impact fee, period.
It's 13.
If they're not, huh?
It's 13702C.
It's in 13?
13702C3.
Okay.
On the green added wording.
13, that's the one way down here.
What page is it?
It's,
13702C.
that's on the
All
number
tap and
7
impact
part.
less than, that's the 400 deal that you caught.
What page is that on, Frank?
I don't know yet. I think it's starting on 13, 59?
59?
Yeah, it's numbered 59, down in the right corner.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, there it is.
So that one is at the very top of page.
The applicant, yeah, here's the language. Bear with me. The applicant will not be required to pay impact fees if the city engineer or his designee determines that no impact is occurring on the utility system. And that means he's not hooking up any plumbing.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm good.
Seems to make sense. Let's see.
So until the meter is turned on, that's when the impact fee would, if Frank,
Yeah.
would take place, I'm assuming.
But when they set the meter,
Yeah, when they turn it on.
what this is saying is if they just lay the pipes, the extensions, and they don't put a meter on it, then there's no impact. Once the meter is set, then there's an impact. Is that
My apology, council, I didn't hear you.
basically what it's saying is if they just run the lines and they don't put a meter on it, then there's no impact.
There is no impact on the utility system.
When they set the meter,
They pay
then
impact.
they have to pay the impact fees.
What's going to happen is the builder's going to come in and ask for a building permit. At that time, they pay all the impact fees.
Impact fees, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And this is just for people that are wanting to use their own contractor, right?
That is correct. With the revised fees, we're seeing more and more of that. And once we have a streamlined process, that's actually staff prefers that methodology so that we don't have any, we don't have to install utilities, we don't have to hire contractors. It's much, and most cities do that anyways.
So is that, I'm trying to look in the appendix, is that written in there anywhere? That it's just for those, because I'm looking at utility extension permit application fee, 140. Is that's just for the people that are gonna use their own contractors, or is that gonna be for everybody?
No, that is just for people that are using their own contractors.
Okay, and I don't know that it clarifies that here.
There, it clarifies it on, not on the fee schedule, Mayor. However, it does clarify it on chapter 13.7 on the line extensions, that they have to pay utility extension fee.
Yeah, I was looking at that. That was page.
Okay, let me go to 7.
Probably
Page
59.
42?
42, okay.
42.
Okay. That's where I see the construction administration fee of $750 per tap, and then the utility extension permit application.
Right,
Fee of $140.
That's where I was at in that fee, that's in the fee schedule.
Right.
And that's where it doesn't clarify. He says we have to go over here to item number 7 down here in the page 50s.
In the 50s?
Yeah.
Utility extensions, is that the section?
Yeah, chapter 13.
13.702? Is that the right one?
Yeah, I was just looking to make sure it clarified.
It's 59, I think.
Page 59.
Number 2, city may utilize pre-qualified contractors.
Yeah.
The eventual making such request. Okay. Okay, as long as it's clear, as long as it's
Council, if you look at page 69.
69?
59.
59.
C2,
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah, that's what-
there is some language in
That's what the
there.
mayor started to read.
Okay,
Yeah.
my apologies.
okay.
Got it.
I was just wondering if we were gonna be charging everybody 140 now, or if it was just.
Got it. Okay.
Anything else? All right, public hearing is open on agenda item number 5. If anybody from the audience would like to speak on number 5. All right, hearing none. Again, I recommend we leave the hearing open and
Okay.
since this is our first reading, and then we'll address it again.
Hold on, we got something.
Can I speak?
Mhm.
Yes?
Can I get water, Chair?
Gotta get here early to get the comfortable ones.
Sorry, Russ Attree. If you, any way possible to approve what the changes are, it'd be greatly appreciated. We're somewhere around 100 taps behind. And we've got property that we can't close on because we can't do the taps because there's waiting for the new paperwork. So we're really desperate to get the permission to be able to do it. And,
Is there any reason why we can't vote on this today?
It's up for possible action. I'm just,
Let's take action. I don't think anybody's.
I don't think anyone, we're gonna change anything on this.
just that one wording.
Yeah, but the motion would be with that change.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Can't do that yet.
Oh,
We have to
okay.
close the public hearing.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, taking that into consideration, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing. 8:26 PM. All right. Any council discussion or action? Dick?
I would make a recommendation that we approve how would I do this? Public ordinance amending Appendix A fee schedule. Am I on the right one? No, I'm on, yeah, that's it.
5.
You're doing 5 and 7, right?
7 doesn't require any action.
Okay.
Mayor, before Council Weatherly moves, if, we just need to get the ordinance number from Sandra, and if she gives us ordinance number, then you can read that and you'd be good.
Can you give me a number?
When we present these to the council, we provide a generic ordinance, and then if it gets moved to this agenda for discussion and consideration, then the number is generated then. Just FYI.
Wasn't expecting action to be taken, so.
No, sir.
Well, I think it's legitimate to try to help our contractors and people building in town to get this approved. So I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 19090502 with the modification in section C, changing it to 400 feet from 500 feet.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, this ordinance doesn't need the change. The only ordinance, this doesn't affect chapter 13. This is
Yeah.
only affecting
Right.
the fee schedule.
Oh, is that in 13?
Yes.
Yes, sir,
Oh, yeah, it is. Okay.
that's for number 7. Councilman.
And this two at a time thing's just got us all messed up.
So I will withdraw the amendment to the
All right.
ordinance.
So I've got a motion for 19-09-05-02 for the fee schedule. And he changed that, was our motion, was our second in agreement?
I withdrew. Second.
All right, so I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. All right. Number 7, discussion, consideration, possible action on ordinance amending chapter 13, Utilities, Article 13-700, water and wastewater line extensions of the Code of Ordinance, providing effective date, repeal or severability, proper notice, and open meetings clause. Is there any further discussion on that?
Do we have a number for that?
We don't need one. Here's the way you do that.
Okay.
I move that we approve the ordinance amendment to Chapter 13 Utilities, Article 13.700 Water Wastewater Extension Lines to the Code of Ordinances as presented, with the modification that we changed where it says 500 feet to 400 feet. And then if that's approved, the ordinance number will go on it.
So is that your motion? Is that a motion by you?
Yes.
I'll
Second.
Everybody good?
Good.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. All right, we are at number 6. Discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding an amendment to the interlocal agreement with Cap Metro and authorize the mayor to execute the amendment.
Mayor, if I may, this is a agreement with Cap Metro Transportation Authority, and it creates a mechanism by which Cap Metro can return funding through the Build Central Texas process arm of their organization that gives us funding for street and other projects, improvement projects. Currently, we get approximately $42,000 to $44,000 back from them. The one thing I wanted to add to council is, although staff recommends that you approve this extension, we are still working with Cap Metro to try and increase the Build Central Texas allocation. So the dialogue is still going. We spoke with them last week asking about changes to the potential routes and the different route allocations. We are working on a plan to change the services that they deliver to our community and potentially increase our allocation. But at this time, we do not have it, and that's why we're requesting council to approve, consider and approve this agreement.
Are all these just one-year agreements?
Yes, sir.
So why is it amendment and not not a new agreement?
I don't know that answer, Mayor.
Okay. Questions, comments? We've asked for them to give us everything that we put into the system back as part of this, but.
Roughly $500,000.
Yeah, they said no way.
No way.
We continue to ask that.
And when is this agreement up?
It's an annual renewal.
So September 30th is this specific agreement, but this is for that allocation for funding coming back to us. And what they attempt to do is they calculate the amount that you pay and the amount of services that they provide based on what they're doing. And this is, in their rationale, this is what's left over. So they're saying if we give them $500,000 a year, they're effectively giving us $458,000 worth of service. Therefore, here's $42,000 to make you whole.
And can they prove they provided that much? I don't see anybody on the bus.
Yeah, Mayor, they actually approve, they show us their calculations of what they provide, not based on the amount of use, but based on the service they provide. They give us that annually, and that's what we're working on, trying to reroute their distribution of funds to a more efficient operation.
I don't accept that explanation from them. Because we give them 1%. We have looked at getting out of their services in 2016, and we had a buyout. When we talked to them this year, it's over $1 million. So if they're only providing us 450,000 of the 490 that we're giving them, how do we have a $1 million buyout of services they say they've given us, but we haven't paid for? So the way I've always understood this, basically 10% is a street impact fee. And because it goes, I think it just goes into our general fund, but you'll see them put up signs that will say, the street repair is partially funded by Cap Metro,
BCT.
whatever these, what is it called?
Build Central Texas
Build
funds.
Central Texas funds.
And what happens if we don't renew this?
We don't get the money.
We don't get the money.
And we still pay them?
And we
Oh,
still
yeah,
gotta
we
pay
still
them.
pay.
Yeah.
This is the positive aspect of
Kind of
anything.
a strong arm?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely recommend we approve this at some point.
And like he says, we were told this was negotiable. And supposedly other people have done this, but
Leandra's tried to do it too.
we
and
haven't.
They haven't been successful either.
Um,
I'm hoping that Leandra, in their negotiation with Cab Metro, might help us to get some more services, since we have the same zip code as Leandra. You know,
But the good thing is we can take it and kind of earmark it for whatever, and when we do have a project, say like, we do 3 years at a time and we get 125,000 or whatever, we can put that, or we can piecemeal it at 42,000 a year or whatever, but.
For the cost of 1.5?
You know, but.
Mr. Mayor, are we at a point where we can make a motion?
Yes.
I make a motion that we approve the amendment to the interlocal agreement with Cab Metro and authorize the mayor to execute the amendment so we can get our money.
I'll second it.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. All right, 42 grand. Roughly.
Mitigation fee.
Don't spend it all
Number
over the
8,
place.
discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding resolution number 19-1807, a resolution by the City Council of City of Lago Vista, Texas, adopting the new Travis County voting equipment.
Mayor, this was sent to us by Travis County Elections Division, doing exactly what you said. So they have new equipment, and as you can see in the resolution, the request is that we approve this, stating that we agree to use the equipment that they are providing.
Question. Resolutions have no power. What if we say no? I mean, we still gotta use the equipment, right? If that's all they bring
Do
to us,
they
right?
supply the equipment to the county?
Yes, they do the equipment, yes, sir.
So we get it anyway?
Honestly, I don't know the answer to that one, so maybe Sandra knows, but
Well, you've got to have equipment to do the voting.
Yeah, but if they're gonna send it, we have to use their equipment, right?
They pretty much run the election.
Well,
Maybe they would send us their old equipment if we don't approve this.
They send us the,
I did see one community that was using, I don't know if they were using paper ballots. So I think they're just asking, are we gonna use the new Travis County voting equipment, or are we gonna do some other
I don't have a problem with it.
paper process.
And Mayor, if you table this to the next meeting, since this is a item, we'll definitely ask that question and bring you an answer back.
All it said in the email was, this is something that will need to be done before we can contract with them in the future.
So there's one potential obstacle. We just have to pay for
It's
a whole.
another strong arm tactic. We're getting strong arm left and right. Use this or,
Mr. Mayor, this is essentially our expression, the city's expression of approval of this particular type of, if council has some type of objection to the use of this particular type of voting system, you could choose not to adopt a resolution, but otherwise, this is just what facilitates they need our sign off on, this is what we approve for Q's.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I know in our way our charter is written or our ordinance are written, resolutions have no power. So, whether we say yes or no, to me, it means the same. It has no meaning whatsoever.
Just giving a blessing.
It's in this particular, this is giving approval, it's doesn't have to have the effect of a law. And so therefore, it's not like an ordinance would. It's not enforceable by law, meaning if you violate a resolution, violate the covenants of a resolution, you can't be held in a court of law. They could not hold it against you. However, this is an expression of your approval.
I'm just curious.
It's the appropriate form for what they're asking us. They want our blessing.
We're just having a little fun with this.
Yeah, I know.
You go for it, Mayor, and we'll tell them.
I just like to question resolutions,
Okay. Well, now that we questioned it,
Right.
Mr. Mayor, can we make a motion to?
It is an action item.
To approve resolution number 19-1807, approving the new Travis County voting equipment.
I'll second that.
Right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. What was that?
I said, let's just hope it works.
First time for everything.
Number 9, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding the appointment of a council representative to CapCog's General Assembly.
I thought you were doing this.
Yes, but evidently I have to fill out the paperwork every year and it has to have approval. So I've been doing it for 4 or 5 years now, but they require me to fill out the paperwork. So y'all have to vote.
Mr. Mayor,
We'll let you do it.
can I make a motion to appoint Ed Tidwell as the council representative to CapCog's General Assembly whenever it is?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
We have 2 meetings, one in September and one in December, and the one in December is nothing but a Christmas party.
The one in September is during the TML, isn't it? Or is that?
No, this is
separate?
completely different.
Okay.
But this is the group where we are really trying to get a lot of our
Yeah.
grants from.
Yeah.
Our police department
Yeah.
goes, a lot of their police officers go through the CapCog Police Training Academy.
Okay.
So, all right, consent agenda. All matters listed under consent agenda are to be considered routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion on these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Number 10, approval of the August 1st, August 15th, and August 22nd, 2019 special called council meeting minutes and the August 15, 2019 regular council meeting minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. Aaron.
Yes, Mayor.
I need your help.
Yes, sir.
There are new laws in effect, and I keep forgetting to ask the audience to participate on our agenda items. You need to remind me to do that every time.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Since you're legal, know these laws. Thank you. Discussion item. Discussion regarding an interlocal agreement between the City of Lago Vista and Travis County Emergency Services District Number 1 for fire marshal services.
Mayor, the city and Travis County Emergency Service District 1 entered into an interlocal agreement in 2015 and 2016 for fire marshal services. That current interlocal agreement expires September 30th of 2019. The ESD 1 has requested an increase in the fees for these services. City Council at the previous budget workshop requested to change the interlocal agreement to reflect that increase in fees. What staff and ESD1 has done we have updated the interlocal government agreement and presented that to council for your review. We made two changes to that agreement. One would be in the amount of funds provided to the ESD, and the second would be to change the written notice from 30-day written notice to a 14-day written notice. We are just asking for council to review at this meeting, and then we requesting to bring it as an action item at the September 19th agenda or on a later date.
All right. I think we've discussed this quite a bit. Does anybody else have any questions or comments at this time?
Mayor, when we talk about this on the 19th, I would hope we could discuss a number of other issues associated with fees that the fire department has paid, so we might be able to tie this with those fees in that same conversation.
Yeah.
When,
Yeah, we have other interlocal agreements and stuff, and I think if we can get all the information together, but this one will become time critical by 30 September, so
yeah.
I think that's the only one at this time that expires at that time. But if we could get them all going at the same time, I think that would be.
Okay.
Right, city manager reports.
Mayor, I want to report that, another reminder that we have a budget, a special meeting on the budget next Thursday. The FY20 budget will be the only item on that agenda, and we will have it recorded. If we have public input or council discussion, then we'll have that item, and that'll be end of it. And then the following week, we will have a regular scheduled council meeting on September 19th. Which will have the budget on that item, on that agenda as an action item.
Got it.
That's it.
All right, do we have a time on that one yet? Do we know what time?
On the September 12th, 6:30. It was a regular schedule. We didn't change the
No,
time
no,
on
the
it.
12th? Oh, we're still doing even though it's a special call, we're still doing the same time
I
frame?
think we scheduled 6:30.
Okay. Good. Might have to watch it on YouTube. Future meetings. Consider our schedule and items for future council meetings. My consideration is we need to get through this month.
It's the dinner.
Yep, it is.
Do what?
It's CMGA dinner, but that's life.
What, the 12th?
Time's of dinner.
Yeah,
But, yeah.
What time is it?
5:30.
Eat fast.
That's when the cocktail hour starts.
Okay.
Yeah, let's not touch that. Anything? Schedule, future meetings? I don't think I have anything.
Just a question, can that meeting be scheduled at an earlier time during the day?
I don't know when we advertise for it. We have to have it on the 12th, that's a guarantee.
Right.
I don't know what we've,
I'm gonna have to change the agenda. Really hope.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay. All right. But that's not a long meeting, it's a short.
no, theoretically, it's a shorter meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just if it's in the middle of an event, we have to have 4 of our 7
Right,
here, and we're
right.
already down 1.
Right, got it. Got it. Okay.
Schedule it at 9 PM.
Not sure if that works either, Mayor. A couple of the symbols, I'm not sure if they're gonna make it.
P and Z at 7, yes.
Yeah.
P and Z at 7, so I don't have half.
A lot of choices here, this is pretty tough.
Half an hour.
All right. Executive session. Anybody have anything they need to discuss in executive session? All right, I'll call the meeting adjourned at 8:48 PM.
Close, 8:30 is what you were guessing.
I always shoot for 8:30.
Not bad. Josh.
Yes, sir.